The team here us have been fiddling with these three cars, the Toyota Innova Hycross Hybrid, the all-new Tata Safari and the recently updated Mahindra XUV700.
And we've been fiddling with them for a better part of these days to figure out what they like in terms of space, practicality, efficiency, performance, how ADAS works in real-world conditions, and we will continue to test some more and film it.
The idea behind this discussion isn't to tell you exactly which car to buy or give you one outright winner from the three of these. It's to give you the most complete possible picture so that you don't even feel the need to ask us as to which one we should buy. And with that being said, let's meet in the studio. I want to start this discussion, and I do mean that we are literally starting this discussion right now with the cameras rolling. I'm going to ask you this, and we have to answer at the same time on the count of one. Which one would you pick purely on the basis of design? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Safari. Why?
Okay, Tata is distinguishing itself, and I don't mean this just in comparison to the other two. I mean with literally everything else on the road by virtue of design. They've got what I want to call a very, very strong identity going.
Yes.
And the Safari is their flagship, and it shows. The Safari is supposed to be just a facelift, but they've managed to amp up the desirability quotient on it so much. They've got a brand new face, the rear's been tweaked so much, and then there are those little design details, right? You look at the daytime running lamps, the way it has an animation effect whenever you lock and lock, the tail lamps get a similar effect. Those 19-inch alloy wheels, technically one size up from the Hycross and the XUV700, there too, the black and silver contrast that they've used, so good. And then there's the color.
Yeah.
I mean, this rose gold kind of shade you wouldn't really expect on a massive 7-seater SUV, but surprise, surprise, the Safari pulls it off. Yeah. And then there's the fact that Tata's actually gone ahead and kind of distinguished different variants with different color themes. So there's the Adventure, Smart Pure, all of that, which gets tailor-made exterior and interior palettes, which is bound to make the buyer feel a little special, right? Then we move on to something like the XUV700. Technically, it's got an update for 2024, but that's a model year update. There are a few feature changes. Design has remained identical to what we've seen on day one, right? I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's a Mahindra that looks sober.
It is, because that's where the distinction comes across with the Safari versus the other two, not just the XUV700. Because the XUV, I'd say this, the Safari looks most like a concept car, even though this is a deep facelift. Sure. It does look a lot like you could pass this off as a concept car because of how daring they've been with the kind of design elements that they've gone with. That can also kind of backfire for people who would much rather have something that looks a little bit more subdued.
Yeah.
More sophisticated in a way, a little bit more clean in its design. That is what I would say for the XUV700. And obviously, both the Safari and the Mahindra here have got that advantage of being traditional SUV in their design, as opposed to the Hycross, which is decidedly an MPV to begin with. And with the XUV, what I'd say is this, that it's a good thing that they've gone with the choice of black color, because obviously the dark edition is something that's becoming a big plug with the Safari itself. But while the XUV can pull off that black color very well, and it does bode well for the kind of styling package that it's got, I wouldn't say the same with the Hycross that we had. Like, if you told me to buy a Hycross, I'd much rather go with something lighter, because I feel like lighter colors do better justice to the design and size styling package overall for the Innova Hycross, where I feel like it sort of gets eaten into if you go with a dark blue color, even though it's a good looking color.
See, when you look at absolute numbers, right, the Hycross is not a small car by any margin.
Exactly.
It is standing shoulder to shoulder with something like a Safari, which is massive. Despite that, look at how those 18-inch wheels simply disappear under the sheer size and the length of the Innova Hycross. And I get what Toyota is trying to do, right? So they're trying to blend SUV with MPV. The rake of the bonnet, for example, it's a lot flatter, it's a lot more taller. And in its overall aesthetics, it is trying to mimic an SUV, right? But given that the bonnet's shorter, the window area is a lot longer, and of course, a lot of this is purely so that it can function well as a big practical family car. That design trade-off is going to be there with the Innova, where it will look a little more van-like than something like a Safari or an XUV. But I need to say this thing about the Toyota, it is a design that will not look particularly old even after 10 years. I mean, that is something we've seen with the original Innova, with the Innova Krista. They just refuse to age.
I think that will be the case for both the XUV as well as the Innova here.
Yeah.
That they may not be as remarkable or stand out as designs as the Tata Safari is right now. Like even when we were driving over there, I was in the Hycross, you were following me, I was looking in the IRVM. There is a certain amount of occasion to just looking at the Safari. Now, couple of years down the line, will that design pattern age as well? I don't know. But the XUV and Hycross are just walking that perfect line of neutrality to be acceptable even through the years. So it's not going to make as big a statement, but they're good looking cars standalone. And a similar theme can also be seen with these cars with how they go about their interior design.
I agree. I mean, in terms of sense of occasion, that is where Tata's delivering yet again. Surprise, surprise, but they are delivering. And again, it is by virtue of design and let's say quality of materials as well, right? But I want to tackle design first. The Safari's dashboard design hasn't been drastically changed from what we first saw in 2020 odd, right?
Correct.
The touchscreen is now free floating. They've redesigned the climate control interface. There's a digital driver's display and there's a new steering wheel with the illuminated logo. But what they've managed to do is deliver that sense of occasion, even in lower trims, right? It is simply giving you a wow feeling just because of the way it's laid out, whether it is on the top trim, whether it is the leatherette top half, whether it is that wooden like detailing and that really good quality leather that's used throughout the cabin. It just feels like a special car. And when the ambient lighting, you know, smoothly flows across, feels special. That is something that I cannot say about the XUV700 in terms of occasion, in terms of design, because I'm not sure if this is a compliment. For better or for worse, the XUV700 feels and looks very German.
VW like is what I was
Yeah.
going to say. That traditionally, this is a very drastic change for Mahindra. You have to note the kind of green and purple color combinations that this organization used to once go with for cars like
And red ambient lighting.
yeah, it was very, very, polarizing earlier. Right now, this is a very big paradigm shift for Mahindra because the design is very clean. There's not a, wide range of textures, wide range of colors being used inside. It's simple black and ivory. I wouldn't call it beige. It's whitish. And the design is very clean, very cohesive, subdued. It's very corporate,
Yeah.
for the want of a better
Sure.
word, which may not necessarily be the case with the Safari. The Safari definitely has more of a personality there. The XUVs, again, like the exterior design, it doesn't make as much of a statement or feel as wow as the Safari. But standalone, the design is absolutely on point. You can objectively say that this is a good looking cabin,
Yeah.
organized very well, laid out, no clutter, great balance of touch screens as well as buttons. And then we come to the Hycross. That is decidedly Japanese still.
It is. And weirdly enough, both with the XUV700 and the Innova Hycross, I am left wanting for a little more quality. More so with the Innova, less so with the XUV700. The XUV700 has a little more good quality plastic going on, but the Hycross in general, I do not feel like I'm sitting inside a car that costs nearly 35 lakh rupees.
Which, by the way, is the most in this comparison.
Yeah,
By
and
a significant
by a
margin.
significant margin.
Even those little brown leatherette padding bits and all that you've put over there to contrast the black plastic, it's not making up for the fact that you do feel like this is something I would barely find acceptable in a car that is a good 8-10 lakh cheaper than
Sure,
this.
because you look at the top half of the dash, that is hard scratchy plastic. The gloss black used in the center console, that creaks. The plastic tray that they've used in the second row, that is very iffy quality. And even something as basic as the execution of the ambient lighting, right? It just feels very aftermarket-ish and it just does not feel like a car that costs 35 lakh rupees. In terms of design, in terms of quality, I want to give a clear edge to the Tata Safari.
Agreed.
Because it is delivering the most sense of occasion. And when you look at the exterior and interior design package as a whole, right, I think that is one way where Tata Motors is kind of delivering value to the customer, where the customer is feeling like, hey, it is money well spent because A, I'm getting the attention on the road, and B, I feel really good when I'm inside the cabin.
True. And that is the basic sort of ascension you can see, wherein the Innova Hycross is very functional with a little bit of premium flavor dusted in.
Yeah.
The XUV700 gets a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more upmarket, but still pretty subdued. The Tata Safari is like, I want personality. It's the most Ranveer Singh in this comparison if you're talking about design and just being a little bit more willing to be expressing itself as a dashboard, if that makes any sense. In the driving positions though, I'd say that it is the Safari, they all give you the SUV factor, right?
Yeah.
Irrespective of the fact that the Hycross has got the MPV design. When you're sitting behind the wheel, you have a great view around, you have a good commanding view of the bonnet. Getting a judgment is very, very easy. The XUV and Hycross are similar in that way. You're slightly more cocooned inside the dashboard. In the Safari, the sense of size gets sort of amplified, and that is both a good as well as a not so good thing. It's a good thing where you want a little bit more of an ego massage for your driving position, where you feel like you're at the helm of something large. Like that was a big part of the draw of the original Safari itself, where you had a very top-down view, almost truck-like view of the bonnet. But at the same time, if you're a relatively new driver, that position with how big the dashboard is, how big the bonnet is after that, it can get a little bit tricky, a little bit more daunting to get adapted to, as opposed to the XUV and Hycross that both feel very, very car-like in comparison. And I have to make this point here. I had to pick up the Hycross from the dealership in Kurla. Kurla in Mumbai, for anyone who's been there, is one of the most difficult places to drive, one of the most traffic-laden places in Mumbai, filled with nothing but narrow bylanes that somehow become even narrower with more roadworks with no announcement or marking. And I had to get through lanes while following rickshaws. Now, bear in mind, I got into the Hycross after months of not driving it. It is still a large car, but I felt perfectly comfortable. It felt very easy to maneuver. Visibility is great. So you're getting a good balance of usability as well as just the right, SUV factor for a driver.
Correct. And at the end of the day, if this is going to be your first large vehicle, it is the Innova Hycross that's going to make you feel at home the easiest,
yeah.
right? Then we've got the XUV700, which is very neutral in the way the driving position is set up, the ergonomics set up. Then there's the Safari, which just feels large and wide on the inside. And that is the perfect segue to move on to the rest of the car, the second and the third row, right? I want to first talk about getting into the second row and getting out of it. The Innova Hycross, for how it's positioned, I think it is the best car to be chauffeur driven in if you are willing to spend 35 lakh rupees, period.
Okay.
Right? And there's no two ways about it. First things first, getting in and out of the car is as easy as walking in and out.
Correct.
That is something that is going to be good for your knees if you're 40. It is good for your knees if you're 50, 60, 70, right? It is very friendly even for your parents, grandparents, etc. When you're seated in the rear seat, you would notice that we had the captain seat version on test. The sheer amount of travel that the second row has behind my own driving position, I'm roughly 6 feet tall. I could push the second row so far back that I couldn't touch the front seat, right? And even if I leave a fist's worth of knee room in the Innova Hycross, it is still plenty comfortable in terms of headroom. It's great. Cabin width is great, right? Of course, the hybrid's battery pack is placed under the front seat. So footroom might be a little compromised, but that will only kick in if you're sitting very close to the front seat. Otherwise, there's no issue with the footroom either.
I'd like to point out one more thing here, that we had driven the Hycross GX, the lower model, the non-hybrid version. And even there, we had the same sense that if space and practicality is what comes in as number one priority for you, even if you don't go with the higher variants or even the hybrid, you will have a very similar value proposition in this regard when it comes to the Innova Hycross.
And then there's what Toyota's trying to do in terms of, pampering you. So you get sunblinds, that's something the Safari does as well. But it is the Ottoman seat functionality that really sells it for me. You can recline the backrest, pull up the Ottoman, lounge, relax.
Question, how usable was that for someone of your height? Because for me, it's useless. I can't bother with the Ottoman, it supports nothing.
In your own words, you're the exception, not the norm.
Agreed.
But for anyone up to, say, 6 feet tall, there's great amount of support in and around your calf area, right? And that is something, you think of it as an airport lounge chair. Instead of sitting upright, you're just lounging in a chair. It is the exact same feeling. And another weird hack, so as to say, is that if you're reclined, right, and if you're chilling there, you get to use the third row AC vents, which are right up here. That cools the top half of your body. The second row AC vents will cool, the rest of the car. it just feels very, very relaxing. So if you want a 35 lakh rupee car to be chauffeur driven in, it is going to be the Innova Hycross, hands down. Second on this list is going to be the Safari.
Yeah.
Right? But I'd say it is marginally so, because A, the Safari does require a bit of a climb in compared to the XUV and compared to the Toyota as well. And the seats themselves are heavily bolstered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are of a normal build or an athletic build, absolutely no issues. You would in fact prefer these seats because they'd hold you nicely. But if you kind of spill out like us,
If you're fat,
so that is something where you'd find yourself spilling out, not enough support, stuff like that.
I'd say this is the similar case even for the front row seats.
Yeah.
Wherein the XUV and Hycross have got slightly flatter seats, so it's more accommodating for larger frames. With the Safari, it's the contouring is a lot more, it's better defined. Lateral support is also better. But if your build is slightly larger, that may not feel as comfortable.
What Tata's also doing is Tata's giving you two very unique features. One is the comfort headrest. Once you experience that, the only thing that kind of comes close is what the Kodiaq has in terms of the neck supports.
Nap pack.
Yeah. With the Safari, you also get rear seat ventilation with the captain seat version. The other two cars don't. In terms of space, it's got enough knee room for a 6-footer, behind a 6-footer, no issues. Footroom isn't an issue. Headroom, despite the panoramic sunroof, is acceptable even for a 6-footer. The XUV comes in a very close third. Maybe a finger's worth or 2 fingers worth of knee room it's missing on compared to the Safari. This is not a deal breaker in any sense of the word. What I like about the XUV700 is that the seats are flat and they are wide. It's almost as if they've copy pasted the front seats at the rear.
Yeah.
And even they've got individual armrests. They feel supportive if you have a wide frame, right? The only complaints that I have are in terms of the rear air conditioning. It's placed down in the center, so it only ends up chilling your knees. And I think it could do with sunblinds.
There's also the fact that you go for, it's a slightly small amount of descending order of comfort or convenience being offered, because the Innova Hycross gives you powered middle row seats with adjustment. The Safari gives you sliding adjustment. With the XUV700, captain seats were only just introduced with this latest update, and those seats are fixed. So you do have a tallish driving position, so you won't feel like your view is being blocked out by the front seats as much. You do have the similar sort of stadium seating that Safari has gone for, but because the middle row seats can't be adjusted, it reduces that one layer of flexibility that you'd want with a feature like captain seats in the first place.
Sure. What the XUV oddly enough does, because it has a fixed second row, it gets one feature that both the Innova and the Safari should have had, and that is one-touch tumble. It's only on the co-driver side for safety reasons, obviously, and that just makes getting in and out of the third row so easy. With the Hycross, the process is tedious because it's got powered functionality, so you have to wait for an eternity for the seat to slide in front, then recline it, then try and squeeze yourself
But you
through.
can always just walk in through it.
You could.
Same with the Safari.
With the Safari, interestingly, even though the seat adjust is manual, even if you push it all the way to the front and recline it, the aperture that you have to try and squeeze yourself through, it is not fat people friendly at the slightest. But on the upside, even someone of my size can walk through the center of the Safari and sit in the third row. And that brings me to third row space. There's a...
Innova's the best.
Oh yeah, there's a very clear pecking order. Innova is the best, followed by the Safari, followed very closely by the XUV. Now what the Innova is doing right, it is doing so right that it makes the third row of the Safari and the XUV feel a little meh in comparison, right? So the Innova's got great headroom, it's got great width, you can put both your feet comfortably under the second row. And like I said, the second row has so much adjustability, right? Depending on who's in the first row, who's in the second row, you can always tailor space.
Correct.
With the Safari, you've got just about enough knee room, as in someone of my size, a 6-footer, will just about fit into the third row with my knees brushing the front seat, right? But anyone taller than me will struggle. Obviously, you're going to be seated in a knees up position. And one problem that is very peculiar to the Safari is because the way the seat is positioned, the captain seat is positioned because of the railings, you can't put both your feet under one seat. So if you're seated to the right, your right foot is going to be under the front, under the second row seat, your left leg is going to be dangling out in the middle. In case of the XUV700, my knees were firmly brushing against the second row. I was tighter on headroom, right? And footroom was just about manageable. Again, here too, I'm sitting properly knees up. What I'd say to sum it up is, if I wanted adults to be seated in the third row mostly, I'd pick the Innova.
Yep.
But if it's going to be my family and the dog, my adults and a couple of kids, if it's going to be used as a 5+2, where the third row is going to be used occasionally, or it's going to be used for kids, that is where the Safari and the XUV700 are acceptable, not great.
What is your pecking order between the two? Like, we know the Innova Hycross is ahead in the third row department or the second row department by a long shot. But in the third row specifically, is it Innova XUV Safari or Innova Safari XUV?
It is Innova Safari XUV.
So they're that close.
Yeah,
and I think it's a similar sort of value proposition when it comes to their boot space as well.
Yeah.
Because with the third row up, and we did this test obviously not by adjusting the third row backrest just to make sure we can fit in as much luggage as possible. We kept the backrest angle also such that it's actually comfortable, not super upright. And with the third row kept up, the Safari and XUV can manage maybe a backpack or two at most.
Yeah.
In the case of the Innova Hycross, you still have room for a trolley bag and a duffel bag. More so than that, actually.
In the Innova Hycross, you can fit an overnight cabin trolley bag and you can fit a medium-sized trolley bag. That is tremendous amount of luggage. Now, even if you fold the third row away, the Innova somehow has a bigger advantage because it is shaped like a literal box.
Yeah.
It's wide, it's flat, and it's massive in terms of length and height. So, if you want to carry really large luggage, that is where the Innova will really come into its own. We ran out of luggage to put into the Innova. We could have put twice of what we did. Now, of course, even with the Safari and the XUV700, with the third row folded away, you get all the boot space you need in the world. If you are going to be traveling with 4 or 5 occupants and you need a lot of luggage space, both the Safari and the XUV will deliver.
Now let's get into the features, beginning with what all they have in common. So there's the business as usual, smart key with push button start. There's a panoramic sunroof that's common to all of them. They all get alloy wheels, obviously. There's seat ventilation. Front seat ventilation in the case of the XUV and the Hycross. The Safari gets it both in the front as well as the rear seat. There's a powered tailgate on offer with the Safari and the Hycross, but not the XUV700. Leather seat upholstery is going to be common across the board as well. They all get digital instrument clusters too. Anything I'm missing?
All of them get touchscreens, all of them get branded sound systems. By and large, the feature list that's on offer on all three cars are very similar.
Yeah.
Right? And splitting them purely on basis of features is not something that you'd be able to do. What is very drastically different is something that you'd spend a lot of time using, which is the infotainment.
Yeah.
And here, Tata Motors has gone from being the worst to the absolute best
By a long shot.
by a long shot. First things first, the Safari has a larger 12.3-inch screen. The display is the best there is. Obviously, it's got more real estate. The user interface is the cleanest.
Yes.
It is the easiest to figure out which function is where. And the home screen too is the most intuitive in terms of accessing whatever features.
Agreed.
Wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay is available across the board. No issues on that front. Where the Safari also excels is in terms of the sound system. It's got a JBL sound system, has a subwoofer, has the best clarity, the best kind of feel, and there are JBL sound modes, so as to say, which really kind of work if you can't be bothered to fiddle around with equalizer settings. Then there is the XUV700, which has a great screen, great clarity, basic looking fonts, but very functional again.
The only catch with the XUV is that it's great in terms of resolution and, it's good appearance and all that. But the user interface itself doesn't feel as intuitive as Tata's does. Tata's is decidedly more towards Android. Correct. This is still sort of tailor-made by Mahindra. So it doesn't feel as second nature. Obviously, once you buy this car and you figure out everything is going to become the same for you. But it doesn't feel as simple as the Safari's does, nor does it look as good.
Correct. And I think even in the XUV700's case, just because of the sheer amount of space they have,
Yeah.
I think a 10.25-inch screen just does not cut it anymore. It needs a larger screen for sure.
Because it's a thick bezel, then a lot of blank space, and then there's the screen. And it feels like this was done with the intent of giving it that single pane glass look above all else.
Sure. And then we come to the Innova, rather regrettably, which is by far, I think, the worst infotainment this side of 50 lakh.
Yeah, I mean, forget. Yeah, I think that would be the appropriate way to put it, because if the screen size is fine, no issues with that. There's no issues with usability also, because the basic functions are there, but the resolution just looks so old. It does, again, it's not befitting of a car that's asking this kind of money. The plus side to it is that it's not really missing out on any major functions that you would need. Wireless CarPlay, auto, Bluetooth telephony, all that stuff is there. And you've got a grand total of maybe 2 menus to go through. Because you got the home screen and then you go into settings and everything else over there. There's nothing else for you to do. In that sense, it is the most uncle-friendly infotainment system there is. I can explain this to my dad because there is little, I mean, he'll still find a way, but there's little to nothing for him to get confused about, because there's not too many menus for him to dodge through. This is, with the XUV and the Safari, there's a decided effort towards tailoring more towards younger buyers who want a little bit more functionality, who will be looking to spend a lot of time in their infotainment while spending a lot of time in their car. And it's similar with the sound systems as well, right? The infotainment and sound system, the best of the best is the Tata Safari. Sound quality, punch in the sound system, best in the Safari. Then you come to the XUV. Yeah. The screen looks good. Interface could have been a little bit more intuitive. Sound system is good and loud, but the sound delivery itself feels a little bit flat, and you won't enjoy it as much, especially if you're sitting in the second or third row. With the Innova Hycross, the screen is subpar to say the least. Sound system is also okay. It's passable, it's not great. And everything with the Innova, it's like, even if they were priced on par, all three of them, I would still say that this is unacceptable. The fact that the Innova is so much more expensive and it's still compromising on stuff like this, that just leaves a slightly more bitter taste in the mouth when it comes to the infotainment system specifically.
Right. Then if you move on to the other screen, which is the instrument cluster, both the Safari and the XUV700, they have 10.25-inch displays there. Both are great in terms of resolution. Both let you mirror maps onto the screen using Apple Maps on iPhone. And in general, the feed there on both of these displays is great. Absolutely nothing to complain about. Both get multiple views. What I like about the Mahindra is the Kia-like integration of the 360-degree camera, where on the Safari, the feed is shown on the touchscreen. Even in the Innova's case, the feed comes up on the touchscreen. And that brings me to the quality of the cameras themselves.
Yeah, so that is one place where you, first of all, you have the function of blind view monitoring, and the integration is different, like you said. So in the Safari, use the indicators, the entire display comes up on the touchscreen. In the XUV700, it comes in the center of your instrument cluster. In the case of the Innova Hycross, there's no indicator linked functionality of that nature. But the camera quality itself, the ranking again goes Safari, XUV and Innova Hycross for the following reasons. The Safari's camera quality is how everybody should be doing it, period.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if it's Maruti, Skoda, whoever it is. Tata has understood that something like this, it's about visibility that should be at the forefront. So the resolution is great. The processing of the camera feed is very usable. So even when we were driving at night, going towards our shoot location while driving on that highway, I was able to almost entirely depend on the lane change indicator alone and the feed on the camera. So that is something that's very good, that even at night with dusty conditions, the performance was usable. And the same applies to the rear camera as well. The resolution is great, it's very dependable, and it's very useful when you got a car of this size. In the XUV700, the resolution is great, but the display size of the camera feed itself is very, very small. The lane change indicator, fine, that's still kind of small, but it's usable. The issue more so with the XUV700 is not so much with the resolution, is the fact that the camera's got a very weird frame rate issue. There's a lot of lag in that system, which means that if you go slightly fast, it's not matching up to the way you'd want it to be as convenient as you'd need it to be when you're parking or just maneuvering around while taking reverse or while driving ahead either. So that is something that Mahindra needs to sort out. But even if they got that processing on point, I don't think it would be as good as the Tata Safari, just because of the kind of clarity and even the screen size that you have there. Innova Hycross processing is fine, very fluid to use, but the resolution of the camera itself, very poor.
I think the display itself is poor, that it kind of amplifies the poor effort that the camera is making to begin with. From there, let's move on to
safety.
Ooh, there's a lot to discuss here. First things first, Safari is a 5-star rated car, Global NCAP and Bharat NCAP both. XUV700 is also a 5-star rated car, but it comes with a small asterisk. conditions apply. It was tested before the global NCAP norms were updated.
Yes.
Then there's the Innova Hycross, which is not being tested as of today.
Correct. But I think that we can say with some degree of confidence that the Innova Hycross also can be expected to perform well, if not better than the others.
Right. If you come down to the kind of safety kit that's on offer, 6 airbags standard on the Safari. The top variant gets 7 airbags. The Hycross has 6 on the top end, 2 on the lower end. The XUV700 gets 7 on the top spec version. All 3 get level 2 ADAS functionality, which thankfully is not purely camera based on any of them. They're radar plus camera. So you have access to a host of features. There's adaptive cruise control, there's emergency braking, there's forward collision warning, lane departure warning,
High beam assist.
high beam assist. The Safari does not have lane keep and lane centering as of today. That is something that Tata will roll out with a software update. But in general, there is a lot of active and passive safety going on. And I think this is a great time to kind of discuss how ADAS works in all these cars. And which one do you think is the best in terms of being tailored to Indian conditions?
I think all of them are doing a very good job in terms of being India friendly. The gap really comes in, and this is something where we experience, right? We drove all 3 of these cars on the highway in light traffic conditions on NH4, and the issues that come up with these ADAS systems when you're using systems like adaptive cruise control, they're not so much for you. It's just that the system is tailored to maintain a certain distance, a certain gap from traffic ahead, which means that often the cars land up braking unnecessarily. So there's a brake light that comes up, and that can become a little bit jarring for the people who are following you. Standalone, when you're using them by yourself in Indian traffic conditions, all of them work fine. The lane keep assist, for example, if it kicks in, it's not very intrusive, it's not throwing you back into the lane. Centering assist, where it is available, it works very organically. Adaptive cruise control, the speed sensitivity is absolutely bang on. So if you're going at a lower speed, maybe most of these cars will maintain a 1 to 1.5 car distance. If you go to 60, 80 kph, that time the distance goes up to maybe 2 or 3 of their car sizes that it's going to maintain from the car in front of you. It's just that the braking functionality, like you mentioned, it feels like it's the smoothest integration with the XUV700, whereas the Safari and the Hycross just feel that little bit, it's a marginal difference, it's just a little bit more abrupt, where it doesn't necessarily need to be the case.
Correct. With the Safari and the Innova, we got to experience low speed cruise control, the stop and go functionality as well. And that is something that is genuinely usable. And as time progresses, as there are more and more data points for these ADAS systems to compute upon, I believe ADAS is genuinely going to become even more usable than it is today. As of today, with what these 3 cars have, I want to say they're perfectly usable in India, especially on the highway, and inside the city you will always benefit from emergency braking, rear cross traffic alert, and all of those features.
Just one little caveat I'd like to add over here for anybody who's getting their first car that's running ADAS, because this is getting more democratized as a technology. Give the system some time to adapt to it, because it is not, as a feature set altogether, it is not something that you're going to adapt to very naturally if you've never experienced it before. This is where us and how many cars we've played it sort of spoils our perspective. So it's like, if you do get one of these cars, give it some time, practice, play with it a little bit, get used to it. But then once you do get the hang of it, you'll genuinely reap the benefits. And definitely ADAS can be used in Indian drive conditions. It can make it both more convenient as well as safer. Now, the drive options.
Oh, okay. Let's start with the simplest one there is, the Safari.
Tata Safari.
There's one diesel. You get a choice of manual and automatic. That's about it.
Front wheel drive only.
Front wheel drive only, rather regrettably, because the Safari name is kind of emotional to a lot of people, even though very few of these emotional idiots actually pay money for 4x4. But the engine option that it has, it is not particularly the best one there is it? I mean, it is the 2-liter FCA sourced engine that we've also seen in the Jeep Compass and the Jeep Meridian and the MG Hector and the Hector Plus. It is probably going to be the new national diesel engine of India, but it is showing its age.
It is.
It is crude, it is noisy, cold starts sound really loud, it takes a while to smoothen out.
And it's not especially fuel efficient either.
Not especially fuel efficient either. Between the manual and the automatic, I will always wholeheartedly recommend the automatic. save your left leg. That is all I've got to say. And also the automatic kind of smoothens out, you know, any inadequacies that the engine has in terms of the way it delivers its torque, right? It can get a little peaky, a little spiky if you aren't very smooth or progressive with the clutch. I feel this engine is built to munch miles on the highway.
It is.
And city usage is like punishing this poor little thing. I would recommend it for extended highway use all the time. We move on to the XUV700,
Yep.
which gives you the most amount of options.
Yes.
There's a turbo petrol, which can be had with manual, automatic, only front wheel drive. There's a diesel, which can be had with manual, automatic, and the choice of front wheel drive and all wheel drive, but all wheel drive is available only in the top trim.
Correct.
Both the petrol and the diesel feel great. They feel perfect for the size of the car. They give it really good performance. The petrol is deceptively quick. It is something that you would enjoy pushing, but it is still going to be the diesel that I recommend.
Correct.
Purely from a fuel efficiency standpoint, especially if the car is something that's going to see quite a lot of city use, because we've got a couple of XUV700s in the circle that are returning single digit fuel efficiencies within the city. I'm not surprised. It's a 2-liter turbocharged engine. But even with a manual, the fuel efficiency isn't going to be great. It's going to be strictly acceptable. This all-wheel drive option is intriguing, and I'm glad Mahindra has chosen to give that option, because a car like this is supposed to take you places. It is supposed to explore, and if that is something you see yourself doing, it is the Mahindra that delivers with the all-wheel drive.
Right. And with the, I think we can sort of give it a round picture while throwing in the Innova here, because you have the XUV as a center point. It has a petrol, it has a diesel. The diesel is more refined, it's smoother, it's more responsive than the diesel that you get in the Tata Safari. Yeah. The petrol is quicker, it's more enjoyable, it's more enthusiast friendly than the Innova Hycross. Yeah. But the petrol is also thirsty, like you mentioned. Yeah. For me, if you were looking to buy a petrol version among any of these three, it would have to be the Innova Hycross.
Hybrid.
Because the Innova Hycross hybrid, because you are obviously getting the benefit of fuel efficiency. Like we saw, this is a car that is entirely capable of doing 850 to 900 kilometers at the very least on a full tank. Like we have driven our test, like it's standing outside right now. I've picked it up on a full tank of fuel. The bar is still on F. Driven from Mumbai to here out on the highway, from Pune, good 300 to 350 kilometers. For whatever reason, the fuel kata is still on F. I don't know how.
We found out how later that day. The fuel needle on our press car failed and showed a full tank even when the car had no fuel at all, leading to the Hycross being accidentally driven dry, a loss of fuel pressure leading to the system's warnings going off. Weirdest issue I've ever faced, to say the least, and a serious one. That being said, the hybrid system itself worked perfectly fine and is capable of delivering an 850 to 900 kilometer tank range depending on the drive conditions.
But so that is the benefit over there, that you have obviously fuel efficiency, but you also have performance. Yeah. Because we've done those rollouts, we've seen how it can gap the Tata Safari. Yeah. And that is the benefit of electric assist, because it's so instant. You're not waiting for some turbocharger to kick in. You're not waiting for the car to rev its, daylights out. Although it does get vocal if you do want to go for sort of faster overtakes. Do not take that to be interpreted as a lack of power. Yeah. It's just how CVT transmissions tend to behave in general. So if you're a little bit more balanced with your throttle inputs, you can get the benefits of efficiency, even with load, and while in getting a drive that's plenty enjoyable too.
With the Hycross, it is surprising how quickly it builds speed. Yeah. You do not expect it to go that fast, and you do not expect it to get to those speeds as quickly, right? Then, in the interest of this discussion, there is a non-hybrid version of the Innova Hycross that is available as well. It's available again only with an automatic, which I think Tushar described it in the most perfect way when we did the Drive to Death episode. It feels like a Honda City that is
larger.
That is larger. That is what that engine feels like to drive. Again, perfectly fine if you want to commute around in the city and go on leisurely highway trips. That is drive done, which brings us to
ride comfort.
Ride comfort, and this is kind of tricky. Yeah. It is tricky for me because it is very difficult to single out a standout in terms of what is car A doing better than car B or is doing car C, because in the larger scheme of things, neither of these cars are uncomfortable per se.
Yes.
You can take them through really bad roads, you will be reasonably comfortable. They are fantastic out on the highway. Stability is not a concern or extremely praiseworthy in any of them. They just work. What is your pecking order and why?
For me, the XUV continues to be the middle point over here because the Safari, while running on those 19-inch wheels, we experienced on the first drive, there is that slight bit of firmness. But it's not until you sat in these other two cars where you would say that, okay, there's some room for improvement over here. Maybe the bump absorption could be a little better. Maybe
A little
some
more
of-
progressive.
little bit more progressive, if sharper bumps could be ironed out just a little bit better while driving out on the highway when there are undulations. The Safari has a sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 movement happening. It's sort of going this way very slightly. You have to pay attention to really spot it, but you can experience that just that little bit. So it feels a lot more like a traditional SUV than these two would. The Hycross is by far the best when it comes to ride comfort, and that is my sort of summation of the Hycross as a product, wherein space, practicality, and comfort are everything to this vehicle, and everything else around it, whether it's the design, features, everything else is what's garnished around it. That is at its core. So with load, without load, if you're driving, the bump absorption is better, the body roll control is better in the Hycross, and the XUV is just that middle ground, but it's neutral. It's not going to feel as comfortable as the Hycross is. Sharper bumps are not going to be ironed out as smoothly, but you won't feel them as much as you would in the Safari either. With the Safari, there is one little bit of a catch that maybe once you go with the lower variants that are running smaller wheels, that characteristic may be more similar to the XUV. But that being said, I can say with absolute confidence that the Innova, irrespective of the variant, is the most comfortable pick of all of these three.
Right, and that brings us to the verdicts. And we need to sum up. I don't know how long we've been talking, but let's begin with what is the anomaly here, which is the Innova Hycross. Like you said, everything about the Toyota is centered around it being spacious, practical, and comfortable. So my use cases for the Innova Hycross are A, I want an out and out family car.
A proper 7 to 8 seater.
A proper 7 to 8 adult seater. That is what I'd put it to. Or I want to be chauffeur driven everywhere. I don't care about anything more than my single seat in the car. It is by far the most comfortable as well. But where it drops the ball is in terms of A, feeling like it's money well spent. Because the interior quality, it just does not feel like it's worth that much money. The other side to the Innova story is, of course, the wait times, which is, I don't know, I'm not sure when Toyota is going to get a handle on this.
Yeah, but they're in the range of 8 to 12 months right now.
Only for the ZX and the ZX option, that is where the bookings have been halted. But if you're okay to settle for a slightly lower spec version of the Hycross, that is still available at roughly the price, at roughly the same price point as top spec versions of the XUV and the Safari.
So I think broadly there's the same point that we make with a lot of Toyotas when it comes to the Hycross, that it is audacious, the price that it's commanding. Yes, there is definitely some premium to the hybrid technology itself. But the fact of the matter is that with this kind of packaging on the inside, with this kind of execution of the features, the only reason that this car is able to get away with charging this much is the fact that it is a Toyota and the fact that it's an Innova. Those matter. You can't, if you take those out of the equation, if you just had this selling under any other brand, I don't think people would be as okay with this price point.
Who's also being audacious is Tata.
Yes, slightly.
Right? We'll set context. The Safari front wheel drive costs as much as a XUV all wheel drive.
Top end to top end.
Top spec to top spec. In terms of features, it's got a few special features that neither of the two cars have. But what it is really delivering on is the sense of occasion. That is one car that I'd be very happy waking up to and looking at. That's parked in my garage. That's my car. That is the Safari.
The Tata Safari has the most emotional appeal.
Yeah.
And I feel like this would be the case even if you changed its name to Safari to what it was originally going to be called, the Gravitas.
Yeah.
So if it is going to be called that, just because of its design on the outside and the inside, the way they've executed, the kind of features, the drama that you get with this car just as an experience,
Yeah.
that is something that the Safari delivers on in spades. And there are those slight advantages also with the third row space, with the second row space, with those few additional features that you're getting in comparison to the XUV or the Hycross. And yes, for whatever it's worth, the infotainment package, the digital instrument cluster, the features offered on the inside, the ADAS, they're all great. It's just that those small things like the refinement, like the responsiveness, like the ride comfort, if they could have been improved, and then if you got it into the price point, you would be able to call it a stronger competitor to what is ultimately the best balance of this segment, and that is the Mahindra XUV700.
The XUV700 is vanilla ice cream. You cannot go wrong with it. Yes, it's giving you the least in terms of cabin space, but it's not a deal breaker. It's not unusable. Yes, it has a few features missing, but you look at the price, right? Top spec to top spec, it's about a lakh and a half cheaper compared to the Safari, almost 4 lakhs cheaper compared to the Innova Hycross. Earlier, we'd be cribbing about waiting periods on the XUV700. Now that problem's been tackled as well. Yeah. So the XUV700, whether it is in terms of what it's giving you, in terms of powertrain options, in terms of picking a 5-seater or a 7-seater, at the price that it is offering, is a genuinely compelling product.
So we've had an incredibly long discussion now, but I think let's give them a quick little sum up of all three of these cars.
Okay. So the Innova Hycross, buy for space, practicality, comfort.
And the hybrid.
The Tata Safari, you buy for the sense of occasion, good cabin space, really good infotainment experience, and because you want one. And you buy the XUV700 if you want a little bit of everything.
That sounds like it makes the most sense. So that was a long and incredibly long of this comparison review. We hope that we were able to deliver on that original promise of giving you the most detailed, the most granular picture of this segment and how each car in it fares. And you're able to make an informed decision to figure out which car here makes the most sense for you, because the idea here is not to give you an outright winner. Yes, the Mahindra XUV700 is the best balance of the lot, but that doesn't specifically mean that it's going to be the best car for you. Match your requirements to the right car, and as always, we hope that this discussion was helpful for you. If it wasn't, go ahead, let us know in the comment section down below. You can disagree with us, give this video a dislike, but if you did like it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Obviously, follow us on Instagram, follow our YouTube shorts, and yeah, anything else to add? Nope.
No, like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.